Hello, everyone. This is Tikva from Homeopathy for Humanity on our Sunday Materia Medica Pura learning session, where we are in this book still. We'll be in this book for quite some time. And we begin with Arsenicum, Arsenicum album. We'll probably be able to get through a good portion of the introduction, if not possibly the whole thing, because it's like 7 pages long. Okay. Screen share.
Yeah. Give me a second. There we go.
Okay. The semioxide of metallic arsenic in diluted solution, but not just merely a solution, right, guys? As we get to later. Okay, so Hahnemann starts out here saying that as he wrote down the word arsenic, considerations, the most momentous thong upon my mind. Okay, so arsenic is a very strong poison that has been used over time to kill people, right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the mere use of arsenicum is somewhat controversial in Hahnemann's day.
Mhm.
Making it in potency made it safe.
Yep.
Okay, so when the beneficent creator made iron, he no doubt permitted, what he meant by beneficent creator is God who benefits us. Made iron, he no doubt permitted the children of men to fashion it either into a murderous dagger or a gentle plowshare wherewith to kill or to feed their fellow creatures. How much happier they would be did they employ his gifts only for the purpose of doing good. This should be the aim of their life, as this was his desire. Okay, so he's saying that God created various substances and that people make the choice of whether or not they're going to use them to harm people or other things, or whether or not they're going to use them for good. It is not to him, the all-loving, which he means God again, we can impute the wickedness practiced by men who have misemployed this wonderfully powerful medicinal substance in enormous doses in diseases for which they were not suitable, guided only by frivolous ideas or some paltry authority without having subjected them to careful trial and without any substantial reason for their choice. So here we have the problem again of using medications based on hearsay, based on materia medica that is not properly proven in humans, and therefore it can be harmful. If a careful tester of the uses medicines and if their dose arise, they inveigh against him as an enemy to their comfort and do not refrain from aspersing him with the slightest calamities. The ordinary medical art has hitherto employed in large and frequently repeated doses the most powerful drugs such as arsenic, nitrate of silver, corrosive sublimate, aconite, belladonna, digitalis, opium, hyoscyamus, etc. And
What is a corrosive sublimate?
corrosive sublimate, mercury.
Mercor.
Yeah, mercury.
Mercor.
Oh, Merccon.
Cor. Corrosive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and if you read old books from like the 1700s or the 1800s, they talk about, just in novels and books like that, they'll talk about the physician coming in and bleeding people and how many drops of belladonna dare they give, how many drops of aconite, how much mercury can be given. If you look at, okay, when America was being discovered from the Louisiana Purchase, from Mississippi River out to the Pacific Ocean, there were people that were employed to do this named Lewis and Clark. And Lewis and Clark, in their medical kits for their trip, had a tremendous amount of drugs that contained these powerful substances, including mercury. And it was used for everything. You know, these people would get diarrhea on their trip and they'd take mercury. And then they'd have even worse diarrhea. And so people would die just from the treatments themselves, you know,
Wow.
being just a standard thing. And strangely enough, a number of these people from Lewis and Clark's voyage of discovery through the western half of the United States of America, strangely enough, a lot of them got syphilis. Isn't that peculiar?
Strangely enough.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so homeopathy cannot employ stronger substances, for there are none stronger. So herein we have the problem when people use mother tinctures. Hahnemann is always telling us that we shouldn't use things in their pure state, and that it can be dangerous, it can be poisonous, it can be a problem, and that we should use things in potency. This is a general theme in homeopathy, to use things that are the potentized dose instead of the use of the botanical elements themselves, which is an important concept, but it is very common that many homeopaths these days are using mother tinctures and the, what would we call it, the botanical products of plants.
Yeah.
It's very common. And it needs to be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, because those are two different things, basically, working by different principles. So and we should work with homeopathic principles, right?
Yes, we should. But a lot of people use mother tinctures.
Mother tincture is not a
Yeah.
homeopathic medicine.
Sorry?
Mother tincture is not a homeopathic.
That's what we are saying, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Very
but
interesting.
many books written by homeopaths on the use of mother tinctures. Therefore, a lot of homeopaths are using mother tinctures.
Yeah. I mean, we were taught in college as well, but I think people fall into that trap just because they're not properly taught the principles and philosophy of homeopathy, so they think it goes hand in hand. I don't think it does, but
Okay, so we should not employ these stronger substances. When physicians of the ordinary stamp employ them, they evidently vie with one another for who shall prescribe the largest possible doses of these drugs and make a great boast of increasing these doses to such enormous extremes. This practice they laud. That means that they congratulate it, they approve of it, that they approve of it, they applaud it, they approve of it, that they think it's fine to give large doses of substances. But if the homeopathic medical art employ the same drugs, not at random, like the ordinary method, but after careful investigation, only in suitable cases and in the smallest possible doses, it is denounced as a practice of poisoning. How interesting is that? That allopaths will consider that homeopaths are poisoning people when they use these drugs, but the allopaths commonly use these drugs. Fascinating. Well, nowadays, it's not so common for allopaths to use belladonna or aconite or digitalis. Well, they do use digitalis, and they use opium with great abandon, right? Here, have some more of these painkillers. Yes, let's take these. Sandra, are you there? I have a question about the use of mother tincture.
Yeah. What is the question?
What kind of dosing are mother tinctures done in? Teaspoon, tablespoon, milliliters, I mean? How does it work?
Okay. Actually, see, they are using, let me show you.
How do you dispense your mother tinctures?
Yeah. We dispense mother tincture, I use. We use such bottle, small bottle, 30 ml bottle with dropper over it and 10 drops in cup of water. Well dissolved and to have it all at a time,
10 drops.
10 drops.
So what are are there different guidelines for different substances of mother tinctures?
I don't think anybody is having but 5 or 10 drops that is given in the pharmacy books.
Yeah, but are there recommendations in the bottle or in Materia Medica, like which Materia Medica is used for giving mother tinctures? And what kind of,
No, no. See, if you read this Materia Medica,
yes, we all have that Materia Medica.
when you open any drug, they have mentioned which drugs to be given in low potency and which drug to be given in higher potency and even in mother tinctures. There are a lot of drugs which are prescribed with tincture to third or say 12 potency.
But boric used
Boric,
very few doses, sir. I accept Sanjay sir, but boric used a very few doses. It's not he didn't give too much doses like a weekly or 7 days,
no,
10
no,
days,
no.
15 days. Like that.
I am not talking about how much you have to give. The
Yes,
question
of
is
course he used.
whether it is advisable in any materia medica or not to give a low potency mother tincture or low potency. How
Yes, sir. It's
long or how
advisable.
much doses, that is typical dependent on how intellectually wisely the homeopath is observing the case. It's typical dependent on individualization.
When I was a student in homeopathy medical college, in the final year we had a great debate whether using mother tinctures in the name of homeopathy medicine is advisable according to homeopathy principles or not.
Exactly. Listen, listen. One thing is that whatever mother tincture we homeopath are using are not the same crude material being used in other herbology methodology, therapeutic ways. The potency has been prepared, whatever potency we are using has been prepared. The first base potency is prepared from mother tincture.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And the way to prepare mother tincture has been given by Hahnemann himself.
Yeah.
Yes, but
We
to make
cannot
further dynamized remedies from them, not to use them as
you
tincture.
cannot make first potency without making a mother tincture. You need to
Yeah,
make
mother
mother
tincture itself
tincture.
have
And
potency, no, sir.
if you look at this chart, I don't know how to show you without sharing screen. He has,
Please show that.
I will,
Please show with figure. Please show it, sir, again.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Bo Ricky and his Materia Medica is that he
Wait
was
a minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. I will try to scan one page for you. By the time you continue, I will try to just give me a minute. Okay?
great. Yeah, Bo Ricky was from the eclectic school, as were many American homeopaths. So
Mhm.
it became a fashionable thing. And then, recently somebody said in the group that giving mother tincture, that it's a sure shot to give that because it's so strong that you know for sure it's going to act. And then you can follow up later with homeopathic treatment. So this is a theoretical problem that a lot of people are dealing with on an everyday basis. For example, I do use calendula on surface wounds as a mother tincture. So I will admit to that.
Actually, ma'am, Hanuman also used the mother tincture, but he used it in a homeopathic way. That
Yeah, exactly.
uh, he added a single drop of bryonia in 100 ml of water, and he mixed well, and he used a single spoon like that. He used, but in here the people using 15 ml, 30 ml mother tinctures, they prescribing to one single patient. So I don't think it's a homeopathy complement.
Exactly.
I don't. They may get some results out of such material doses, but I don't think it is homeopathic relief. Uh, what do you think, ma'am?
Oh, I think it falls under herbology.
Pardon?
Herbology, the use of herbs as medicine.
Ah,
Herbology is its own science. And so I like to, when I see people using mother tincture, I think of it as like herbology, the use of herbs as medicines, as opposed to homeopathy.
Mm.
in pathological cases, you mean?
In no, in all cases, I think that it's herbology and not homeopathy.
Okay, okay, okay.
Homeopathy is supposed to use the potentized dose.
Yes.
Yes, but it's hard to define what is potentized.
Recently,
And how it depends on how similar the remedy is, and we don't still know about the remedies enough to judge it clearly. Because I think when Hahnemann mentions when we did arnica, I think second part, Hahnemann mentioned using like more of a material dose on a body part, right? If I remember well. I don't think that was herbal use. I think he did it homeopathically, but the dose was more material and less potentized. But that doesn't mean it wasn't homeopathic to the case. That's just my
Can
opinion.
you allow me to share my screen?
You have permission. Everybody has permission to screen share,
Yes. Should I stop sharing mine?
but you have to come back to it. You're not done.
Just 1 minute, give me 1 minute.
To see here on Arsenicum, Hahnemann is talking about the employment of material doses being scoffed at by, what's it called, about allopaths being upset with homeopaths using drugs that are potentized, while they use the same drugs
Yeah,
in,
what's the meaning of the last word, ma'am? Rectitude?
rectitude. Yeah, I don't know.
you got it, Sanjay?
Yeah, just a minute. I need to turn that image. Okay. Okay, I got it. Can I?
I think rectitude means like an attempt to make things right.
Yes, rectitude, yes. To make
So they are pretending, that they want to invest in
See
progress
my-
of medicine, but they just want to stick to their old ways.
Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
No. Mm, mm, mhm.
Recently, I met a case, ma'am. Actually, it's at the end of conclusion of the urination. He had a severe excruciating pain. Finally, I took 100 ml of water, add a few drops of sarsaparilla Q, and we gave 10 seconds, and we gave single spoon every 1 hour like that. Within a day, he got great relief from.
Can you see? Can
Yeah,
you see this?
is wonderful with the dying patient.
Pardon?
Hey, Sanjay, remember keeping your uncle alive for a couple of years with multiple metastatic cancers?
Can you see the screen?
No.
We don't see your
No?
screen. I want to talk about your uncle when he had cancer in so many different organs. And I gave him arsenicum and he stayed alive and thrived went back to riding his motorcycle for a couple of years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I need to turn off. You wanna should turn off the screen share so I can.
Problem. No problem. Yeah.
Okay. Just a minute. Huh?
Yeah, arsenicum's a wonderful drug.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
Oh. Oh man.
You make it just a little bit bigger.
this is an old method. Old means this is Hahnemann method to prepare an drug. It's not we are using juice or like that, like herbology. So you will see there is a drug power for each drug. So how much percentage is being mixed with alcohol or distilled water. And he has described these 8 classes.
9. 9 classes.
Sorry, 9. Sorry, 9.
No worries.
And if you remember, he has classified that according to a type of drug. And this 7, 8, and 9, 7, 8, and 9 are actually harder drug to mix in water or alcohol, or they can be a poison, more poisonous drug. And look at the drug power they have been using 1:100, and look at belladonna first 1:2, and this is drug power which been used to potentize to make first potency.
Okay.
This is a ratio to prepare other tinctures 1:1, 3:2, 1:2, 1:5, 1:9, 1:99. Why he mentioned this? It's depend on toxic character of the drug
Okay.
to make it more usable for human body, right?
Yes. We're getting away from the topic though.
Yeah. Okay. You can share the screen
Okay.
and give me 1 minute. Continue with the topic, please.
I can. Okay. There we go.
Okay. Yes,
So-
so we're How prejudiced, how unjust, how calamitous is such a charge made by persons who make pretensions to honesty and rectitude. Don't we love the things that Hahnemann says? Okay.
It's very direct.
It's
Doesn't beat around the bush.
how prejudiced, how unjust, how calamitous, how wrong, right? As such a charge made by people who make pretensions to honesty and rectitude. Oh, okay, strong language from Hahnemann as always.
Yeah.
If homeopathy now make a fuller explanation, if she condemn, as from conviction she must, the monstrous doses of those drugs employed in ordinary practice, and if she, homeopathy, relying on careful trials, insist that very much less of them should be given for a dose, that where ordinary practitioners give a tenth, a half, a whole grain, and even several grains, often only a quadrillionth, a sextillionth, a decillionth of a grain is required and sufficient. Then see the adherents of the ordinary school who denounce the homeopathic healing art as a system of poisoning. See how they laugh aloud at what they call childishness and declare themselves convinced without a trial, that such a small quantity can do nothing at all and can have no effect whatsoever, is indeed just the same as nothing. Okay, so Hahnemann's saying here that when he talks about a grain, he means, for example, like a grain of wheat or a grain of rice. That is like the old-fashioned, very, very old-fashioned quantity of the grain. So he's saying that when an ordinary practitioner gives a tenth of a grain or a half of a grain or even a whole grain or even several grains, or even when only a quadrillionth, sextillionth, or decillionth of a grain is required and sufficient, that they will denounce homeopathy as saying that it's poisoning people. For example, we've got a really great case of that happens from time to time in America. The teething tablets. The Highlands teething tablets made by Highlands in the United States have a small quantity of belladonna in them. And they say that some children have died or become very ill with the tiny quantity of belladonna in potency, but in a decimal potency. I think it's a 6x. And that parents just give it because they're told that homeopathy is safe, right? Everybody talks about how safe homeopathy is. And they've said that it's sickened some babies who have been teething to have these preparations of medicine in, let's say, the 6x potency. So yeah, but at the same time, the allopaths are giving children all kinds of things that are toxic, long-term type of way. But they say the homeopath is giving poison. They don't think about all that Tylenol being poisonous or any of the other products they have as being a problem. So yes, this happens still today, a couple hundred years after Hahnemann had the same problem.
Yes, I'm just confused by this paragraph because I'm understanding that he says the allopaths are saying our remedies are both poisonous, but also the quantity is too small. So which one is it?
Now he's saying that allopaths are saying that even giving a tiny, tiny amount is considered by allopaths as being poisoning the patients without having tried it themselves.
Yes.
And at the same time, they're saying that it can't do anything.
But that makes no sense.
I know, but they say that even today, that it's not possible that it affects anything. But then on the other hand, they'll say, but these are poisons, we can't use them. We have to put them through clinical trials before
Okay. True. Yeah.
So they're saying the same kinds of things today.
Yeah, but today I see more of the it doesn't work, it's nothing, it's water, right? And less of the it's poisonous.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much of that, but
I've seen some of it, and the case in point, the Highlands teething.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of both going on, that these are very, very dangerous. Don't use these, but at the same time, these have nothing in them. It's garbage. They say both.
Okay.
And it was the same in Hahnemann's time.
Okay.
Okay. So if homeopathy now makes a fuller explanation, I read that.
Yeah, they are not ashamed thus to blow hot and cold from the same mouth. Oh, as we were commenting just now.
Yes. They do the same thing.
Yeah.
Well,
And to pronounce the very same thing, to be inert and ludicrously small, which they had just accused of being a system of poisoning, whilst they justify and praise their own monstrous and murderous doses of the same medicines.
yes, but nowadays people are using by and large different medicines.
Yeah.
The times have changed, but the herbalist uses strong quantities of herbal medicines.
Yeah.
But the herbalist doesn't usually balk about what the homeopath does.
Yeah. But I'm just saying this is where we left off.
Yes. It is not this the grossest and most wretched inconsistency that can be imagined, perpetuated for the purpose of being shamelessly unjust towards a doctrine which they cannot deny possesses truth and consistency, which is borne out by experience, and which enjoins the most delicate cautiousness and the most unwearied circumspection in the selection and administration in its remedies. Yeah, so here Hahnemann's reminding everybody that homeopaths are so careful when it comes to treatment. Make sure that the remedy is the right remedy. And we're so careful to give it in potency and to give it only as much as actually needed. And that we're the ones who are very careful to use pure experience with cautiousness and circumspection. Circumspection means thinking everything through. So unwearied circumspection in the selection and administration of its remedies. So yes, before we give somebody something, we think very carefully about how much to give, when to give it, when to redose, and to do it cautiously and carefully. Okay, continuing. Not very long ago, a highly celebrated physician, Marcus of Bamberg is in modern day Germany, I think, spoke of pounds of opium being consumed every month in his hospital, where even the nurses were allowed to give it to the patients according to their fancy. Opium, mind, a drug that has sent many thousands of persons to their graves in ordinary practice. Yet this man continued to be held in honor, for he belonged to the dominant clique to which everything is lawful, even if it be one of the most injurious and absurd character. So yes, hospitals give out a lot of opiates. They don't give straight opium nowadays. They give a lot of opiates, and not only hospitals, and there are serious problems with opiate addiction across the world.
Yes.
And nobody complains about that.
No.
Okay, and when a few years since, in one of the most enlightened cities of Europe, so the enlightened city being Bamberg, to what a low depth of degradation as an art must not medicine to have sunk in this quarter of the globe, when such a state of things could exist in a city like Berlin, which yet in all other departments of human knowledge has scarcely an equal. So he's saying that Berlin is like the height of knowledge, and yet they still make the same mistakes. Every practitioner, from the belittled physician down to the barber's apprentice, Remember, the barber was one of the bloodletters and the tooth pullers. These were also jobs of a barber in this time period. Nowadays, we have dentists, but not back then. Okay, barbers often removed people's teeth when they had problems with them. Okay, and that's why, you see the barber pole. It's a pole and it's white and it has the red stripe on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a symbolism for that snake that is for Orthodox medicine, Asclepius or whatever he's called, that snake.
Oh, okay.
And that shows that the barber also does bloodletting by that symbolism on the pole.
Oh,
Isn't that a fun fact?
yes, it is.
Yes, the barbers did bloodletting, and that let you know that that barber engages in bloodletting.
Lovely.
Well, they had razors handy, so
Sorry?
they had razors handy
Yeah.
in the barber shop.
Still do. Oh yeah. Damn. That's bleak.
Okay. Okay, the barber's apprentice prescribed arsenic. Okay, so every physician down to the barber's apprentice prescribed arsenic as a fashionable remedy in almost every disease and in such frequent and large doses, one after the other, that the detriment to the health of the people must have been quite palpable. Yet this was held to be honorable practice, though not one of them was acquainted with its peculiar effects of the metallic oxide, and consequently knew not what cases of disease it was suited for. So he says that it was fashionable to put mixtures together with arsenic in it without even knowing its true effects.
Oh.
And yet all prescribed it in repeated doses, a single one of which, sufficiently attenuated and potentized, would have sufficed to cure all the diseases in the whole habitable world, for this drug is the suitable remedy. Which of these two opposite modes of employing medicine best deserves the flattering appellation of system of poisoning? The ordinary method just alluded to, which attacks with tenths of grains the poor patients who often require some quite different remedy, or homeopathy, which does not give even a droplet of tincture of rhubarb without having first ascertained whether rhubarb is the most suitable, the most appropriate remedy for the case. Homeopathy, which by unwearied multiple experiments discovered that it is only in rare cases that more than a decillionth of a grain of arsenic should be given, and that only in cases where careful proving shows this medicine to be the only one perfectly suitable? To which of these two modes of practice does the title of honor, thoughtless, rash systems of poisoning, best apply? Any comment?
To which of these two modes of practice? Yeah, I mean, he's right. And it's kind of amazing to, when you think about it, like how progressed Hahnemann was and how his teaching is simple and how actually insane it was from the people of that time to give medicines out. Like they had no idea what they did. Like people had side effects, they wouldn't even consider, oh, maybe it's from the remedy I gave them. They were just giving it out like, oh, it's a cure at all. Just take it, it's fine, you know.
Right.
Really weird, yeah. But he
Mhm.
makes sense, yeah.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how it's still hard for people, I mean, to accept, you know, that homeopathy is superior, you know, without knowing anything about it, like how clean and scientific it actually is and how, you know, it makes sense.
People really, they still don't want to accept the
No.
gentle yet deep acting method of treatment.
I think it's almost like it's too good to be true for people. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I think there's some of that.
Yep. It's
And the
still,
herd mentality, of course.
of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Yet there is another sect of practitioners who may be called hypocritical purists. Pure hypocrites. Okay. If they are practical physicians, they indeed prescribe all sorts of substances that are injurious when misused. But before the world, they wish to pose as patterns of innocence and caution. From their professorial chairs and in their writings, they give us the most alarming definition of
Poison?
poison, so that to listen to their declamations, it would appear advisable to treat any imaginable disease with anything stronger than quickgrass, dandelion, oxygen,
Ah,
and raspberry juice. According to their account, poisons are absolutely, for example, under all circumstances, in all doses, in all cases, prejudicial to human life. And in this category, they include, as suits their humor, a lot of substances which in all ages have been extensively employed by physicians for cure of diseases. But the employment of these substances would be a criminal offense had not every one of them occasionally proved of use. If, however, each of them had only been of one single occasion, it cannot be denied that this sometimes happened. Then this definition, besides being blasphemous, is a palatable absurdity. Okay, so he's talking about people who only think that very, very weak medicines should be given, and that under no circumstances should anything stronger be given to people.
okay. So it's like the other extreme.
Yes. And
At least they admit it's poison.
yes, they admit that it's poison. But then he says that it can't be denied that accidental cures have happened with these strong substances given inappropriately, that it has happened, that people have gotten better using them. Because he says, under all, absolutely and under all circumstances, injurious and destructive, and at the same time beneficial, is a self-evident contradiction, utter nonsense. So you can't say that under all situations is something dangerous and destructive, and then at the same then say sometimes it's beneficial, because that's contradictory.
Okay.
They seek to wiggle out of the contradictory assertion by alleging that these substances have more frequently proved injurious than useful. But let me ask, did the injury so frequently caused by these things come from itself? Or did it not come from the improper employment? In other words, was it not caused by those physicians who made it unskillful use of them in disease for which they were unsuitable? The medicines do not administer themselves in disease. They must be administered by somebody. And if ever they were beneficial, that was because they happened to be given appropriately by somebody. It was because they might always be beneficial if nobody ever employed them otherwise than appropriately. So if we use a medicine appropriately, then they will always be beneficial. And if we use a medicine inappropriately, it will be occasionally beneficial. Hence, it follows that whenever these substances were hurtful and destructive, they were so on account of having been inappropriately employed, used. Therefore, all the injury they did is attributable to the unskillfulness of the employer. So really, whether or not something is dangerous or not dangerous comes down to its appropriate use. So the appropriate use of a substance is extremely important. Not just to blame the substance, but to blame who uses the substance and whether or not they use it properly or improperly. And we continue. These narrow-minded individuals further allege that even when we attempt to tame arsenic by means of a corrective, example, by mixing it with an alkali, it still often does harm enough. Nay, I reply, the arsenic must not be blamed for this, for as I before observed, drugs do not administer themselves. Somebody administers them and does harm with them. And how does the alkali act as a corrective? Does it merely make the arsenic weaker, or does it alter its nature and convert it into something else? In the latter case, the neutral arsenic salt produced is no longer arsenic proper, but something different. If it would be weaker, then a simple diminution of the dose of the pure solution of arsenic would have been a much more sensible and effectual mode of making it weaker and milder than leaving the dose in its hurtful magnitude, and by the addition of another medical substance endeavoring to affect some, but nobody knows what, with alteration in its nature, as it takes place when a pretended corrective is used. If you think a tenth of a grain of arsenic too strong a dose, what is to diluting the solution and giving less, a great deal less of it.
Yeah.
So he's saying here that allopaths have tried to make things less poisonous by adding other substances to make it safe. A tenth of a grain, I hear some say, is the smallest quantity the etiquette of the profession allows us to prescribe. Who would write a prescription to be made up at the apothecary shop for a smaller quantity without rendering himself ridiculous? Oh, indeed, a tenth of a grain sometimes acts so violently as to endanger life, and the etiquette of your clique does not permit you to give a much loss. It's not an insult to common sense to talk this way. Is the etiquette of your profession a code of rules to bind a set of senseless slaves, or are you men of free will and intelligence? If the latter, what is it that hinders you to give a smaller quantity when a larger quantity might be hurtful? Obstinacy, the dogmatism of a school, or what other intellectual fetters? Okay, so this is a very interesting point here that he makes. And, it comes into play a little bit differently nowadays with modern medicine, where we have socialized medicine. There are rules and guidebooks for how much medicine you can give and under what circumstances. So the people are basically senseless slaves and not men of free will and intelligence, because who is allowed to go outside the pharmaceutical manuals?
Yes.
Your treatment.
Yes.
You go to the allopath that is part of the socialized medicine system. People say, okay, they have indigestion. So the doctor will say, okay, what kind of indigestion? They'll say, okay, it's heartburn. They'll say, let's give a proton pump inhibitor. And then they have a whole class of lists of proton pump inhibitors that they are supposed to try with the first one first. And if that first one later on didn't prove to be effective, then they're allowed to go to the second one. And the doses have been standardized. So nowadays, have very, very little free will when it comes to what they can prescribe and in what situations. And even, where there's socialized medicine, people can very, very rarely get permission to give a drug off label if they want to try something. There's so many rules now that is, not so much of a code of ethics, but being a slave to the system. Continuing, arsenic, they protest, would still be hurtful, though given in much smaller quantities. Even if we were to descend to the ridiculous dose of 1/100th of a 1,000th of a grain, a minuteness of dose unheard of in the posological maxims of our Materia Medica. So it's not in their books, therefore they can't do it. Even 1,000th of a grain of arsenic must still be hurtful and destructive, for it always remains an uncontrollable poison. So we affirm, maintain, conjecture, and assert. So they have strong opinions about this, saying that it is always hurtful and destructive. Continuing, what if with all this complacent asserting and conjecturing, you have but once blundered upon the truth? It is evidence that the virulence of the arsenic cannot increase, but must decrease as the dose is reduced, so that we must at length arrive at such a dilution of the solution and diminution of the dose as no longer possesses the dangerous character of your regulation dose of 1/10th of a grain.
Can I just ask something
Yes.
about what was just read? I don't understand the word virulence in this context. I think it's quite peculiar.
Virulence, like danger.
How is it? Not related to the contagion or virus.
No, virulence, danger.
Virulence is a toxicity of that drug.
Okay, toxicity.
Toxicity means how much stronger it is. Virulence is directly proportional.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, continue.
You can read for a few minutes. I don't mind.
You don't mind? Okay.
Okay, Ivana?
Should I? Are you too tired to read, Sanjay?
Yeah.
Oh, for you. Okay. Such a dose would indeed be a novelty. What kind of dose would it be? Novelty is indeed a capital crime in the eyes of the Orthodox school, which, settled upon her old less, subjects the reason to the tyranny of the antiquated routine. But why should a pitiful rule? Why indeed?
What is mean by reason to tyranny? Subject reason to tyranny of antiquated routine.
Oh, so the reason is the victim of the tyranny of routine. So it has always been done this way. It doesn't matter that your reason objects to it, but you know, the ancestors say to do it that way. I don't know. Anyway, but why should a pitiful rule? Why indeed should anything hinder the physician, who ought by rights to be a learned, thinking, independent man, and controller of nature in his own domain, from rendering a dangerous dose mild by diminishing its size? What should hinder him, if experience should show him that the 1,000th part of a grain is too strong a dose, from giving the 100,000th part of the millionth or the millionth of a grain? And should he find this last act too violently in many cases, as in medicine all depends on observation and experience, medicine being nothing but a science of experience, what should hinder him from reducing the millionth to a billionth? And if this proved too strong a dose in many cases, who could prevent him diminishing it to the quadrillionth of a grain, or smaller still? Methinks I hear vulgar stolidity croak out from the quagmire of its 1,000-year-old prejudices. Ha ha ha, a quadrillionth. Why, that's nothing at all.
Don't we love Donovan? Isn't he hilarious? He's so much fun.
Insane.
The vulgar solidarity croak from the quagmire. The quagmire is a marsh. Okay, so picture, he's talking about this 1,000-year-old prejudices from this marsh where they're croaking. What kind of animal croaks?
Like a crow.
Croak, croak.
You know. I
Frog?
thought
Frogs,
a crow, right?
croak, ribbit, ribbit, ribbit.
Oh,
The
like a frog?
frogs, yes. So he thinks.
What is solidity? Like I don't understand a lot of words in this sentence.
I know the togetherness. They're solidly,
Oh,
and it's vulgar. It's vulgar, which means that it's inappropriate. It's rude. It's disgusting. It's everything that isn't appropriate. It's vulgar. It's rude, and they are croaking together in the marsh of 1,000-year-old prejudices, and they say, "Ha ha ha."
but this is like Shakespeare. I love it. It's so poetic.
Hanneman's hilarious,
No, this is so good.
and he has such strong opinions, right?
Yeah. Thankfully.
Methinks I hear vulgar solidity croak out of the quagmire of its 1,000-year-old prejudices. Ha ha ha, a quadrillion. Why, that's nothing at all.
It's so good. So good.
How so? Can the subdivision of a substance, be it carried ever so far, bring forth anything else than portions of the whole? Must not these portions, reduced in size to the very verge of infinity, still continue to be something substantial, a part of the whole, be it ever so minute? What man in his senses could deny this? So we can reduce the substance and reduce the substance. We put it in the mortar and pestle, we triturate it, and we reduce it. And then we put a tiny fragment of that inside our vial with a little bit of alcohol, and we succuss it. And then we take 1 drop and add that to 99. And then we succuss it. And we take 1 drop and add it to 99. And we succuss it on and on and on till we have substantially reduced the dose, but it still works.
Yes. I mean, I think that's the most important part, that experience shows that it works. Because to be honest with you, like with what was last read, even in my mind, making such a small dose, like he claims, it's still a part of a whole. It still has to be something. But in my mind, it's still, yeah, but a quadrillionth, wouldn't it just perish to nothingness? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But I think as he says, if experience shows it working, then we must accept it and learn more from it, about the nature, of reality, basically.
Yep, because we know that it still works. You can take that and make it smaller and smaller and smaller, as long as you're increasing the dynamization.
It definitely works.
will
It definitely
work.
works. But I think the part that's missing and that he discovered and that we still haven't uncovered properly is we always think, oh, it's becoming less. So we're thinking about the particles, but we are releasing the power, the dynamized power with the dilutions and succussions. So
Yep, it
that's
really
important to remember.
substance, yes, it stops to be such a material medicine, but more of an immaterial medicine,
Yes.
acts powerfully upon the body.
Yeah, because he says in the organon, with trituration, he breaks up the particles, and I think he says something is released. So
Mhm. Right, you're basically releasing the vital force of a substance to be taken to act on a vital force of an organism.
okay.
Okay.
That interpretation.
Let me tell something very interesting.
Okay, you may.
He always talks about the action of drug,
Who?
a primary action and secondary action.
Yes.
Huh? primary action is that action which is produced by drug directly without letting means it's before secondary action happens. It is direct. You have that drug, and drug has ability to have direct action, right? And body it will show that direct action. Huh? Then after some time, there is equal and opposite action to this primary action. Huh?
Okay.
And this is from vital force, and this is secondary action. So secondary action is curative.
Yes.
Secondary action is always equal and opposite. How much stronger the primary action be, that much will be stronger and opposite that secondary action.
Mhm.
What here Hahnemann tells you, you should see, he's talking about dynamic nature of drug, which could have action on vital force of the body, which is producing the secondary action, which is curative. Huh? Okay, he is letting you know to make from his experience that when primary action is having adverse effect on the body, huh? So make it so less means make it more dilute, huh? So it won't have any action on physical body of its own.
You think
And
that's what he's saying? You're sure?
then what happens? It will just enhance the secondary action to happen without having the primary action. So drug will not affect your physicality directly, but it will just boost it will create secondary action from vital, which will be equal and opposite to primary action. Imagine there is a drug which is giving a person diarrhea. Imagine. Huh? The drug which is giving you a diarrhea, and secondary action will be of stopping that diarrhea. Huh? Right? When you are giving a remedy on homeopathic principle, you are giving remedy for diarrhea. It's more confusing, right?
I think it's not the topic.
It's making sense.
It's not the topic. It's a conversation we can have another time under
Yeah.
another headline. It's a
Yeah, that's
it's a very good topic, on the mechanism of action and the theories behind it, not the topic of today.
Yeah, so Sanjay, maybe you'd condescend to give us this topic of primary action and secondary action on Thursday.
Yeah, I like my idea better that I suggested in the group, but
Would you like to give that topic on Thursday, Sanjay?
that's a good idea, yeah.
What is the date? Actually, dates this 2 weeks will be very hard to find. Actually, I need time to make. Okay, not part of topic. You continue.
I
This
didn't
is-
think anything bad. It's just I think it would be a great talk for another time.
Some another time.
Yes.
Right.
Thursday is the 24th, by the way. March.
March before 31st, we have actually financial year end.
Sorry?
World has financial year end. So it ends on 31st March. So it is a lot of stress to end all the accounts.
Okay. 7th of April.
But I will make it. I have a lot of pending topic in coming years. Probably will begin in April.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Now we have big topic on board.
Sorry?
We
Okay,
have big yet to complete.
Yeah, we're on page 3 of 7. So
go ahead and read for a minute, Sanjay. Experience.
Mhm. Experience already decided the question and is seen to do. Oh, I'm getting lost. Okay.
sorry.
Experience already decided a question and is seen to do so daily by every unprejudiced person.
Seem to do so daily.
When I have finished with the wiseacres, oh, what's that word?
I love this word wiseacre.
Wiseacre.
I don't even use
The
a
wise,
colorful.
what is mean?
Wiseacre. Wiseacre is like a joker. But when I have finished with the jokers who never consulting experience fuel the small dose of homeopathy as a non-entity, as utterly powerless, I hear on the other side of the hypocritical stickler for caution still inveigh against the danger of the small doses used in homeopathic practice without a shadow of proof for his reckless assertion. So you have on one end, we have a polar action here. We have on one side, we have the jokers who never consult experience, ridiculing the small dose as a non-entity, meaning that it has nothing in it, that it's inconsequential, that it is meaningless. And then you hear on the other side, the hypocritical sticklers who caution against the danger of small doses in homeopathic practice without a shadow of proof for their assertion. So you have the polarity of the people who balk at one end of the spectrum and the polarity of the people balking at the other end of the spectrum.
I think we
Yeah.
missed. Well, I think we skipped a huge bit.
Oh, I think you're right. Okay, and if this quadrillionth, quintillionth, octillionth, decillionth continues still to be really an integral portion of the divided substance, as no man in his senses can deny, why should even the minute portion, seeing that it is really something, be capable of acting, considering that the whole was so tremendously powerful? But what and how much this small quantity can do be determined by no speculative reasoning or unreasoning, but by experience alone, from which there is no appeal in the domain of facts. So we have to use the pure medicine of experience by putting a substance through the proper provings to know what it's capable of. It belongs to experience alone to determine if this small portion has become too weak to remove the disease for which the medicine is otherwise suitable and to restore the patient to health. This is a matter to be settled not by the dogmatic assertion of the student at his desk, by experience alone, which is the only competent arbiter in such cases. So the only jury or judge of such cases of at what point the medicine still works is inexperience. Now he has a few words for such people who are not willing to experience it, but just judge it without experience. If arsenic in the dose of 1/10 of a grain be, in many cases, a dangerous medicine, must it not be milder in the dose of 1/1000 of a grain? And if so, must it not become still milder with every further diminution of the size of the dose? Now, if arsenic, like every other powerful medicinal substance, can, by merely diminishing the size of the doses, be but rendered so mild as to be no longer dangerous to life, then all we have to do is merely to find by experiment how far the size of the dose must be diminished, so that it shall be small enough to do no harm, and yet large enough to effect its full efficacy as a remedy of the diseases for which it is suitable. So suitability is an important concept. And also, to what degree of the smallness of the dose can we take it to so that it still works homeopathically in a case? So we continue.
Yeah, of course.
Experience, and that alone, not the pedancy of the study, not the narrow-minded, ignorant, unpractical dogmatism of the schools, can decide what dose of such an extremely powerful substance as arsenic is so small as to be capable of being ingested without danger, and yet of remaining sufficiently powerful to be able to affect in diseases all of this medicine, so invaluable when sufficiently moderated in its action and selected for suitable cases of disease, was from its nature ordained to be so by the beneficent creator. So he's saying here that God has created this substance, and we need to take it by pure experience to the point where it is no longer dangerous and it's only helpful in the situations that call for it. We will see later on that he says, do not use arsenicum without being absolutely sure that the situation calls for it. Okay, so the pedantry of study, the narrow-minded, ignorant, unpractical dogmatism of schools cannot decide, but only pure experience. As you remember, homeopathy is the medicine of experience.
Yeah.
Okay, it must, by dilution of its solution and diminution of the dose, be rendered so mild that while the strongest man can be freed by such a dose from a disease for which it is the appropriate remedy, this same dose shall be incapable of affecting any perceptible alteration in the health of a healthy infant. Okay, so we need to remove the dose and make it smaller and make it smaller and make it smaller so it doesn't give any symptoms. We don't want to have additional symptoms added to the disease, because then that becomes a, what's the word? What's the word? What's the word? When we give too much medicine, we get a what in the patient?
Proving
Aggravation.
disease. Oh.
Yes, approving, aggravation. And when that has gone too far, we have a, let's try, medicinal disease.
I said that. I said artificial disease.
Oh, artificial disease. Yes. Okay, there you go. Artificial disease. But then again, we're creating a tiny, tiny, tiny artificial disease in the person that we are healing. So, but we want to make sure it doesn't get too strong. But when people have had a large dosing of a lot of doses, that have been inappropriate. We can have a medicinal disease. It's like how Hahnemann talks about chinchonism, where people have had malaria and they've had a lot of cinchona and they are sick with cinchona. And we have the medicinal disease that on top of spora becomes more complicated to treat.
Oh man.
Okay, and this problem can only be solved by oft means often, repeated experiments and trials, but not settled in the sophistical dogmatism of the schools with guesses, its assertion, or its conjectures. We must have pure experience with true proving data. Hence, the Materia Medica Pura, the information of pure experience, pure Materia Medica, pure Materia Medica. Nobody's guessing.
Mhm.
We are not guessing with this book. We have the pure experience of people. Okay.
Okay.
No rational physician can acknowledge any such limitations to his mode of treatment as the rusty routine of the schools. So you can't be rational and use the rusty routine of the schools, which is never guided by pure experiment, combined with reflection. Because what happens with the proving? People put down their things and then they think about it and they reflect upon it, and which dictate to him. His sphere of action is the restoration to health of the sick, and the countless potent forces of the world are freely given to him by the sustainer of life as implements of healing. Not is withheld. Okay, so the sustainer of life, he's also referring to God here, gives us implements of healing. So God gives us medicines to be able to help people get well. And we can't use these things without pure information. Continuing, to him who is calling, it is to vanquish the disease that brings its victim to the verge of the corporeal annihilation and effect a kind of renunciation of life, a nobler work than most other, even the most vaunted performances of mankind. To him, the whole broad expanse of nature, with all her curative powers and agents, must be available in order to enable him to perform this curative act, if we may so call it. But he must be at liberty to employ these agents in the exact quantity, be it ever so small or ever so large, that experience and trials show him to be most adapted to the end he has in view. In any form whatsoever, that reflection and experience has proved to be the most serviceable. All this he must be able to do without any limitation whatsoever, as it is the right of a free man, of a deliverer of his fellow creatures, and a life restorer, equipped with all the knowledge pertaining to his art, and endowed with a godlike spirit and the tenderest conscience.
So lovely.
Yes. So people need to have access to things to be able to heal others.
Yeah. What does it mean, a deliverer of his fellow creatures?
Mhm.
But what does it mean?
To deliver them from sickness.
To deliver.
To deliver. To deliver would be to relieve. Okay, like if you're going to deliver a baby, right? You're taking
Yeah.
the baby is coming from the mother. So you've got somebody who's stuck in sickness and you're delivering them from sickness.
Okay. Nice word.
separating, basically, to separate people from illness. Okay, and that requires knowledge pertaining to his art and endowed with a godlike spirit and the tenderest conscience.
Yeah.
So we have to be conscious and conscientious. Okay. From this God-serving and noblest of all earthly occupation, let all hold aloof who are deficient in mind. So people who are mentally deficient, or they do not have a judicial spirit in any of the branches of knowledge required for this exercise, or in tender regard for the weal of mankind and a sense of his duty to humanity, in one word, who are deficient in true virtue. So he thinks that people, when they're going to be aiding people who are ill, need to be virtuous and judicial and intelligent. And then he says, away with that unhallowed crew who merely assume the outward semblance of health restorers, but whose heads are crammed full of vain deceit, whose hearts are stuffed with wicked frivolity, whose tongues make a mock of truth, and whose hands prepare disaster. So he's basically kind of like saying that to be a healthcare practitioner, you need to be of a certain, have a certain focus. How many people go into medicine because they want the honor?
A lot. Almost all of them.
How many people go into medicine because they think that it's going to make them a lot of money?
A lot of them.
So he's saying that this is not good to go into it for the honor or for the glory or for the money or any of these things, because it is a very, very important job. And it's the noblest of all earthly occupations, is what he calls it.
Nobler than most.
Mhm. Yes, so he says it's very, very important to be a health restorer and not to be vain or stuffed with frivolity or to mock the truth and to do dangerous things to others. So he's saying it's a very, very important job, but not to be entered into lightly, right?
Yes.
Okay. The following observations are the result of doses of various strengths on persons of various sensitivities. As you remember that the person comes with their own sensitivity. Then we come to something that we are going to put in the drop down box of this video. Because we come to the information where Ivona did the math.
That's me.
Yep, Ivona did the math, and the next segment of her doing the math is going to be put as a link in the description box of this video. So you have to check this out and watch her do the math and explain the mathematical portion here.
Yes. Because we're now the next section is the preparation of the remedy, right?
Exactly that. Okay,
Yeah.
so what time is it? I don't have my time.
It's 5:30. 6 your time. 6:30 where you are.
Okay, so how long have we been at this?
An hour and a half.
Okay, we've already been here for an hour and a half. So what we will do now is we will pause. We will let you watch this video that we have prepared today, and then you get to watch Ivona's video, and
Hey.
we can meet next week on Sunday and continue after we hopefully watch Ivona's video in the meantime.
Yes, highly recommended.
Highly recommended, and it will be in the drop down box.
Yep.
Underneath the video. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, guys, thank you for joining us today for this little bit of learning from Hahnemann's words.
Yeah, thank you. Until next time.